There we go. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So firstly, good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of my grandparents, family, friends who have joined us here today from all across the world. Thank you firstly for joining today, and welcome to the book launch of An Activist Turns Reformer, an autobiography by my grandfather, R.D. Mathur. A quick introduction to myself. My name is Karishma Mathur, and I am privileged to be the eldest grandchild out of 4 of R.D. and Prabha Mathur. It is a pleasure for me to host the event this evening. Before we begin, a couple of administrative topics. We would be recording this event today to keep as a memory for us for the future and for those of our friends around the world who are unable to make it today. Secondly, at the end, we would like to open the floor for about 15 to 20 minutes. Please feel free to connect with my grandparents during this time. In the meantime, you can also send in your messages, your comments in the chat box. We will be sure to share these with them post the event. So this is an occasion we have all been waiting for quite some time. We've been trying to convince my grandfather to write a book, but it was only the continuous persuasion of 2 very close friends of his, Mr. Saroj Gandhi and Mr. Farhad Forbes, that actually finally convinced him to put on paper a little bit of an overview of his experiences over the last 93 years. The book spans times of a historic nature in global history. It runs across continents and countries in a seamless manner. But it also highlights the many issues that MRA and the IOFC were instrumental and privileged to participate in. And I'm sure you will read more about this in the book as well. For us as grandchildren, from a very young age, all 4 of us have grown up listening to the fascinating, often unbelievable adventures of my grandparents. Starting from my grandfather's university days in Benares, to their trips to the USA, traveling all across Europe, and then their days at Asia Plateau in Panchgani. One story that I remember that kept me engrossed for many hours was of his travels to a country in Africa. He was invited as a guest of state to visit the home of the emperor or the king at the time. They had lions guarding the gates of the palace when my grandfather walked in. And that was not the only intriguing part. He soon learned that guests of state were offered the eye of a bull to eat as a welcome gesture, and they stared at you in anticipation till you did. There have been multiple other, even more engrossing stories over the years that we as grandchildren feel so excited that my grandfather has now decided to put these down into words. Also, if you're wondering if my grandfather ate that bullseye, yes, he did. As Saroj Uncle has played such a critical role in the creation of this book, I think it is only fitting for him to please say a few words.
Today is the culmination of a dream, really. For many, many years, I have felt that R.D.'s life must be recorded, not merely as history, but to inspire people in IOFC and outside to try and take up even an iota of the work that he has done over the years. Those of you who will have the good fortune of reading the book will understand what a remarkable life he has led. On the one hand, he has gone into coal and iron ore mines to speak to workers and convince them to change their lifestyle. And on the other, he has met heads of state, kings, prime ministers, you name it. And he's done all this not for any glory or any self-interest, but in order to try and make things better for countries that he has been visiting or he has visited, and for the people who have had the privilege of interacting with him. My first contact with R.D. was in 2003 when I met him in Panchgani. And the first thing that struck me was that he was the spitting image of a very close friend of mine who I had lost a few years before. And therefore, I was immediately attracted to him. Somehow it seems the attraction may have been mutual because over the years, I have been privileged to hear so many of his stories and adventures that it just convinced me more and more that this has to be put on paper and people must have the privilege of being able to read it and experience what he has been through. R.D. is a tremendous storyteller. It comes naturally to him. And in fact, I don't think either Charles or I had too much to do with the writing of the book. All we did was transcribe R.D.'s own storytelling, maybe adding a comma here and a full stop there. But apart from that, doing very little else. The only change that I suggested and was agreed to was that instead of making it a chronological story, we split it up so as to emphasize his work and the work he did for MRA and IFC over the years. I hope that you will enjoy reading it. As I said, for me, it's a day of great satisfaction. It's a dream come true, and I am truly very happy that we are going to be launching this book today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarosh Uncle, for your guidance and your continued support to my grandfather and for helping him bring this book alive for us today. I'd now like to hand over to another very close friend of the family who has been instrumental in the creation of this book. Over to you, Farhad Uncle.
Thank you, Karishma. I first met R.D. about 40 years ago, a little before you, Sarosh, in 1981. And it was my first visit to MRA at Asia Plateau. It was one of the early international dialogue conferences. And at that time, I was still working as an engineer at Hewlett Packard in California. And I had sort of come back for a short Christmas holiday to see my parents. Our parents, many of you would remember meeting Darius and Maruk. They had met MRA just a few years earlier. And in their letters to my brother Naushad and me, they had mentioned MRA and some of the people associated with MRA. And among them were both R.D. and Prabha. And this was shortly after a period when there was a lot of industrial strife in Pune. And MRA had played a significant role in bringing management and union leaders together to talk and resolve differences, to essentially understand each other's positions. And that conference had much impact on me, and it gave me the opportunity to witness the power of dialogue and the effect that selfless committed people like R.D. could bring to the world. And it also motivated me very much to consider returning to India from the US as well to, contribute in whatever way I could. And over the years that followed, after I started working in our family business, both Naushad and I had the opportunity to visit Asia Plateau often. It was for various MRA conferences, but also for meetings and conferences that we held there for our own organization. And one of the highlights always was if R.D. was present, because he would join us at conference sessions and meals and talk to us. And he never failed to inspire us with his stories of his travels, whether it was to post-war Europe, Japan, the United States, and as Sarosh mentioned, meeting with, heads of state, prime ministers, people from civil administration, and all with the single agenda of bringing about reconciliation between people who had previously were at war with each other. And he had other stories to relate as well about his work in post-independence India, working with political leaders here, people from industry, trade unions, farmers, students, and just others from the general public as well. So the friendship between our family and R.D. and his family grew over the years. We had the privilege of having R.D. and Prabha come to our home in Pune when they were passing through on their way to Panchgani. And later our parents would make it a point to catch up with them during their visits to Delhi whenever it was possible. And R.D., our father, shared many things in common with you. You were both contemporaries at Banaras University in the early 1940s when Dr. Radhakrishna was Vice Chancellor. You both shared a common passion and commitment to realize India's independence and were involved in protests as part of India's freedom movement. You were in Delhi and our father was in Madras at the time. And both of you, I also discovered after reading the book, that you both contracted hepatitis at Banaras University and both had to interrupt your studies there. So that was also a common element there, which I discovered after reading the memoirs. Well, Rati, Naushad, and I are very fortunate to take the relationship that R.D. and our father established between our families into the next generation and through our friendship with both Sunil and Nikhil as well and their families. And in conclusion, I just like to mention three things that impressed me about R.D. and which I learned from him. First, his vision for our country and the world, and where, despite seemingly insurmountable problems, there must be hope that the vision of a better future can indeed be realized through the efforts of committed people. People who are committed to make a difference and bring about change. Second, his faith that each individual can make a difference, no matter how small or insignificant one might seem to be. And what it requires is really an unwavering commitment to fundamental human values, which are guided by our conscience. And that if we take the initiative to address specific problems, whether in the world, in our country, organization, or our family, we can indeed make things better. So that was the second thing. And finally, his belief that leadership goes together with humility. R.D. is a living example of what humility and leadership means, and that such leadership can be really effective in resolving difficult issues. So these are some of the best lessons in leadership one can ever learn. And I consider myself tremendously privileged to have had the benefit of being exposed to them through my meetings with R.D. So R.D., Sarosh and I are so grateful to you for agreeing to write these memoirs. This book is not just a record of such a rich and great life, but we hope that your experiences captured here, as Sarosh has said, will also inspire to serve, will serve to inspire people, just as they did for those of us who've been fortunate to know you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Farhad uncle. And now I'd like to request my grandmother to formally unveil the book, and for Sarosh uncle and Farhad uncle to join my brother and sisters and us in launching the book.
Are we supposed to hold it up as you mentioned?
Yes, please.
The only unfortunate part of this is that R.D. is not wearing the shirt that he was wearing on the cover.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
And now for the moment we have all been waiting for, the man of the evening, I'd like to hand over to my grandfather to speak a little bit about the book.
Thank you, Karishma. I'm touched and moved by the words I've just heard from Sarosh and Farhad. Sarosh has been more than a friend, and his support, his help, his vision, all have contributed greatly to this day when we are in a position to launch the book. Sarosh has been a great inspirer. He has held important positions in his life, but he has kept his fingers right on the pulse of the situations that he is in. So, Sarosh, I want to say a very big thank you to you today for all that you have done to me and for all your help and support for making this possible. And of course, the family of Farhad, right from the Raz and Maruk and Naushad, they have been wonderful hosts, wonderful friends, and they have made a very, very great contribution in where we are today. I do recall, as Farhad said, the tremendous tensions and battles that were going on in Pune when the Rayas wanted an end to all these things. And I do remember him sending his whole union people to Panchgani and getting them to find a solution by consultation and not confrontation. And they did, and returned with a solution to their situation. But this was not only in his industry, this was in all the other industries of Pune that they brought a new situation. So their contribution has been immense. And I was very moved and touched. And I think that is what turned the key when they said, R.D., you must write your memoirs. And I had been told this by my son Sunil, who also wanted me to write my memoirs, but I ignored it. I'm not a writer, and therefore I ignored it. Then Rajmohan Gandhi asked me to write my memoirs, and even that I kept postponing because I could not see how to find the time and the energy to do all this. But when Sarosh and Farhad phoned me and said that we want and we will give you all the support that is needed, I thought that through all these friends, the God Almighty probably wants me to have a go at it. And so here we are today with that book and its launching. I am 93 years old now. God willing, in a few months I'll be entering the 94th year. And age has its constraints, as you all know. So it has not been easy to try and put things together in the form of a book. And, but I do thank God that we have reached this day and that I am alive to see this being launched. I'm not going to speak much about the book except to say that it is not just a walk through the memory lane, but it is the battles, the victories, the grappling with the forces of history of our time, and with the help of God Almighty, sometimes come up victorious in those situations. That has motivated me to at least put in record these things. And so I was in Kenya when the Mama were on. I was in Uganda, staying with many of the kings of Uganda at that time. I was in the Middle East with Colonel Nasser and the leaders of Sudan and Ethiopia. And all these interactions with the common man and the leaders of these nations not only enriched me, but somehow or the other they also gave me the clue to what could those nations be. And I am grateful that we could at least have some part in turning the tide in many of those nations. I am also grateful that as a thing for the future, we were able to build and have a part in the construction of the Asia Plateau Panchgani Center. That spread over an area of 70 acres and having an ambience which many who visit it say they have not found anywhere else. That center is now a gift for generations to come to reshape this continent of Asia. I've lived in Vietnam. I was the guest of Prime Minister Un Hu in Burma for 2.5 years. We lived in Laos, Cambodia, many of these Asian nations, and of course in Japan and Philippines. And I would not venture to touch upon those visits, but those of you who can manage will find at least some idea of it in the book that I have tried to put together. So thank you so much for your support. The job is unfinished, and we are handing over to the generation that is now going to take on the future reconstruction of our world and our continent. Thank you so much again, Farhad, Sarosh, and of course, Charles Fernandez, who has worked very hard, not only in printing and putting the whole thing together and designing it, but also put his sweat and effort to see that it can be launched as soon as possible. And last but not the least, I was married, and it was an arranged marriage. And my wife Prabha has played an important role alongside me in being a firm friend and ally in the battles that we have fought and lived together. She has been a tower of strength. And so I have also wanted to take this opportunity to say how grateful I am that I have a partner like her alongside me. Thank you so much for all your support, help, and for all your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you. We thought it would also be interesting for everyone to hear a couple of excerpts from the book that may also encourage you to read it. I'd like to ask my uncle Nikhil Mathur to read 3 short paragraphs from different sections of the book, which will give you a flavor of my grandfather's enriching life journey and experiences.
Thank you, Karishma. I will be reading 3 passages from the book, highlighting 3 aspects of my father's journey. Starting with the first, R.D. Mathur, the activist. While at university, he had his first of many encounters with the Vice Chancellor of the university, who later became the President of India, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. I quote, "I was nervous and fearfully walked with him to his impressive office. I sat quietly across his huge table. Then the Vice Chancellor broke the ice and said to me, 'Young man, I am as keen as you are for the freedom of our country, but the way you are going about it will only delay it. You concentrate on your studies and leave it to some of us to fight our way for the freedom of our beloved country.' There was silence. I did not know how to respond, but unexpectedly, something bubbled inside and I blurted out, 'Sir, you alone cannot get us freedom. You need the youth and people of this country fighting alongside you to shake up the entrenched British Empire.' Dr. Radhakrishnan smiled, paused, and then said, 'I like your spirit, young man. You have got it right. But we must not give the British another excuse to close down this university.' He again repeated, 'I like your spirit, young man. Let this be the start of a lasting relationship between us, and let us stay in touch.' The second passage showcases R.D. Mathur, the reformer. after his extensive travels across all continents. I quote, "Returning back home to India, there was a job to be done, to feel the pulse of the country and to invite our countrymen to build together a clean, strong, and united India. A march across the nation was undertaken under the leadership of Rajmohan Gandhi and myself by his side. We organized training camps for the youth of India in different parts of the country. A stage production, India Arise, was created that went through the length and breadth of the country and drew huge audiences. It then went to Europe. We simultaneously undertook the ambitious project of building an MRA conference and training center, Asia Plateau in Panchkani. And I was based there for several years to see the project through to the end. They created the play Song of Asia and took it to various cities in our country and also to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. This is just a flavor of all that we were involved in. And now a snippet of his reflections, I quote. "There are still miles to go, and it will need a bold, convinced, all-out minority giving the lead. It cannot be done on the cheap. There is a price tag to it, as there are no free lunches. The price is nothing compared to the cost of doing nothing. It has not only transformed the inner furniture of my life, but also changed the direction of my life. It has given to me the God-ordained purpose of my life and put me on a new course. For me, it is not a theory, but an experience. I think the greatest gift a person can have is finding the purpose of their lives. With that, life is never dull. If you have a compass and a destination, then life is fulfilling. This purpose of our lives is within us. It is revealed through that clear little voice that speaks deep inside us. This, in short, is the story of a long and unusual journey of my life." Back to you, Karishma.
Thank you. I hope this gives you an idea of what to look for in the book. With this, I'd like to now hand over to my father, Sunil Mathur, to say a word of thanks.
So good evening, everyone. It's really a delight to see so many people here, many of them who we haven't met for ages. But also, I think, especially for my parents, to be able to see each one of you is really an amazing gift. We've been, as Sarosh Uncle mentioned, we've been trying for quite some time to convince my dad to write his memoirs, have never really succeeded. So it needed Sarosh Uncle and Farhad, who are both very close to my parents and friends of the family, but obviously have a much greater influence on him than Nikhil and I do, to actually get this book underway. And once they were able to convince him about it, he started typing every single word of the over 200 pages that you will see in the book. He picked up on the computer, on the laptop, and he started typing one finger, one hand, each one of those 200 pages in detail, went back to them several times as new memories came back, as details became clearer. And I think for him, it was in spite of everything that he talks about in terms of age-related constraints, I think he was at it more or less 8 or 10 hours a day for well over a year. And a lot of these went back and forth between him and Sarosh uncle on a continuous basis. Um, and I must say, Sarosh uncle was absolutely amazing in the way he was able to edit every piece of that document painstakingly, with care, rearranging sentences, paragraphs, correcting spelling and typo errors. And really a huge word of thanks to you, Sarosh uncle, for everything that you've done. It's absolutely amazing what has finally emerged out of that. Farhad and Naushad have been a great support through this entire process. And Farhad was very generous in his foreword to the book. As always, I must say, both Naushad and Farhad continue to play a key role in shaping and leading industry in the country today. So I think we are delighted that they are here with us today, and together we are able to see how we can make the society a much better place. Um, a word of thanks also to Charles, who had the difficult task of putting this book actually together, having it published in record time, inserting collection of photographs to really bring the book alive. It's not very easy, and the logistics part is always the most difficult. But Charles, in his cool and calm manner, was able to deliver the book in time for today. So, Charles, a big word of thanks to you as well. For me, the book has really brought alive real events in global history. We had heard a lot about them from my dad, but practically now, when we read the details, it does bring to life the amazing work that MRA IFC has actually done over the years to make a difference at a national level, but also at an international level. And reading the book, I actually realized that many of the issues that were being dealt with back then are relevant even in today's context. And perhaps many of the solutions that were led or that were delivered back then, in terms of going back to people and changing individual people, are still very relevant today. So it is really a matter of real pride for us that my father had the privilege of playing a role in bringing about this lasting change in many of these very sensitive and complex situations around the world. But I also learned a lot otherwise from the book, the importance of having a vision large enough. And he writes, and I quote, "When aims are small, people become small, scratchy, and divisive." Farhad has written and mentioned as well in his foreword his faith that individuals can make a difference, no matter how small or insignificant we may be. But also the fact that his conviction that the world can be a better place when individuals decide to change. And through the examples in the book and the work of MRA IFC over the years, all this does come to life, and it is much more than theory. It is real demonstration of the great work that he has been a part of over these years. So thanks to each one of you for joining us this evening. I do hope you will have a chance to read the book. Please do give send him your feedback once you have read it. I know he's very keen to hear it, but it's really a pleasure to see everyone here this evening, people that we haven't met for such a long time. So really, on behalf of the entire Mathur family, a very, very big thank you. Back to you, Karishma.
Thank you. On a last logistical note, the book is available for purchase in India at the link mentioned, I think, in the chat here. For your international orders, please write also to shop.in@iofc.org, as you can see on the screen, and it will be posted in the chat box as well. We would now like to open the floor for your comments and messages. And for this, I would like to hand back over to Sid.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a celebration of a life, very inspiring life and an extraordinary life lived. Thank you, R.D. Uncle, for writing this book. And I know the effort that has gone behind it. Charles and Farhad and Sarosh Uncle, so grateful for this. We just leave the floor open now for any comments, anything anybody wants to say. If you could raise your hand or put your name in the chat, that might help us organize it and use this time well. So it's over to everybody. Anybody who'd like to say anything. You can also, some of you might want to type your message in the chat, and I think Karishma and Anisha are going to make sure that they are made available to R.D. Uncle and Prabha Aunty. So feel free to do that as well. But it would be lovely to hear some voices.
Put up your hand.
Ravi Uncle, Jayashree Aunty, you are on unmute, so you can start.
Okay, let's start.
Well, I just want to be one up on Farhad and say that I knew R.D. Bhai about 55 years ago. And
Well, same here.
and you know, there are many big things he was involved in, but Karishma, I shared your grandfather's very personal love. As a young person, he made sure that every day I had a glass of hot chocolate, which is what my parents had prescribed for me to be allowed to stay at Asia Plateau. So that kind of personal care was there. And after that, for many years, we worked together. I lived with them in their home. And the care and the hard work that went in creating the center and the main buildings, the rock view, the details, all that he was involved in, I have been very much part of it, the perfection, yes. And I'm so grateful to have been, to know them as dear, dear friends and people I look up to.
Well, I just like to echo what Jayashree said. You know, really one of the very, very special thing about R.D. was his personal care for people in detail, every last thing. You know, when anybody is coming, you know, Unu was also here, by the way, he didn't mention that. He had the chance to take revenge on Unu to host him here, and he did very well. And anyone who he hosted, who came to the center, he would go to the room, check everything was all right, personally, not ask somebody to do it, and make sure they are received properly and ushered into the room. It really is very, very touching the way he used to care for people. That's one. On the larger issue, you see, most of us who met him and met IFC was after his international major role. So we really heard him talk about it. And you know how it is when there is familiarity, you don't take it too seriously. It's only, in fact, to be very honest, I began to see the significance and the magnitude of the things that he was involved in only very, very recently. And so I really am grateful for this wonderful life. I'm very, very touched that this book is being launched today and he is there, R.D. And thank you for all you have done to us.
Sid, can I talk?
Hi, Uncle. This is Ravi here. Sorry, am I audible? Hello?
Yes. Can I talk?
Sorry, I was on
Uncle,
mute. Ravi, yes, we can hear you. Then we'll go to Mike and Niketi uncle, and then I think Suresh Matthew, I heard your voice. So after that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
very quickly, Uncle, you just made my day. Um, awesome achievement. God bless you. Age is just another number. So please, let's make it 150 years now. All the very best, Uncle. Awesome. I'm so thrilled. So thrilled. God bless. God bless. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you. Mike and Jean. Mike, you're on mute.
Yes, R.D. and Prabha, what a wonderful moment to see you there. Still full of spirit and twinkle in your eyes. Bless you both. And you have meant so much to our family. And of course, my father, I think he felt that working with you at Asia Plateau was the pinnacle of his architectural career. And it took many people to bring it together, but it was the vision that you were able to share that actually made it happen and come to what it is today. So thank you. And then as well, who was often there with him, and Stan and Aileen Shepherd, who spent 13 years in India and really appreciated so much their whole experience of working with you from the march across India and so forth. And then ourselves, we just feel India is part of our lives and you are central to that. So thank you, and I look forward to reading your book and honor your commitment in the way you let God use you for the lives of people and countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Uncle Niketu, if we could have.
I met R.D. and Prabha in 1957. I was in Bombay, and one night R.D. and Prabha arrived straight after the wedding in Delhi. And they said they were on the way to a conference in Mackinac Island or one of them. And you said soon after the wedding, they were coming like this. That immediately hit me very hard. And so that's when I first met them. Then later, I met them in Mackinac. So I have so many things I want to say, but I realize time is limited. But I just want to say that if I had not met people like R.D. and Prabha and all of you on the screen I see from India, I don't know where I'll be somewhere buried long time ago, probably. But I met such wonderful friends. All were so gracious, so understanding. I cannot remember any of my friends I think of who made me feel bad, angry. And so I want to my special tribute to Prabha, because they were the family, R.D., Prabha, Sunil, and Nikhil. They were quite small boys at that time, on Rani Jhansi Road in Delhi. With an Indian, really highly processed Indian family, I would say. And for the longest time. And I realized, I look back, I must be full of feelings that they sensed, but not one moment I sensed Prabha was reacting. I'm always, when I think of it, I'm just so amazed, Prabha. You were such a generous, gracious host. And when I think of it, I never felt one thing that you were reacting. And so it must be really extraordinary. And I came to realize Prabha loved Hindi movies, and she loved Hindi novels. And those things really came out bubbling. But when she hosted, she was, I can go on and on, but thank you, Prabha, for the way I was made to feel. When I think of the Naga delegation that went, when the first ceasefire was signed with Delhi, and the Naga top delegation came for talks, and I think it was in 1968 or 67 or 8. They were having a very important talk. And so R.D. and Prabha invited them to come to Rani Jhansi Road. I remember their lane was filled up with the black limousines sent by the government of India. And they all came in. The top, the man who was called the Prime Minister and his delegation, the one was Isaac Su, who became later the chairman, and so on. And they had a fantastic dinner. And I won't describe what Prabha cooked for them. Exactly the food they would cook in Nagaland, eat in Nagaland, with bamboo shoots, I'll mention. And then at the end, the cake for dessert was a map of Nagaland with candles on it. And it came out, they all became silent. And they just said, it was a great moment. I think history is shifted, steered in moments like that, not recorded, but also we just felt it was a feeling that something was happening. Now, things are not right at all still, but I see that as an intervention of God that started. And I have so many things to say, as I said, but those things I want to mention. And R.D., he in Panchkani, I had working out difficult things in my life. R.D. listened very carefully, not easy for him. But at the end, I realized that here was a man who was so gracious in his hospitality, his patience. My God, what patience with me. And all these things I recall with deepest gratitude, R.D. and Prabha, and Sunil and Nikhil and all your family. Thank you, Karishma, for the way you brought this together. Thank you so much, all of you. I should end there.
Oh, wow. Such a beautiful sharing from Niketu, uncle. Thank you. Thank you. Before I go to Suresh Matthew, R.D. uncle, Archana, the junior Rao, her publishing hat is on probably. She's asking a question. What was the most difficult part of the book to write and why? If you want to respond to that.
Well, frankly, there were chapters when I was writing, tears were flowing from my eyes. This was not recording an event, but I was living into those events. And these tears were not just tears, they were a heap of emotions that came out with it. I was in Philippines. For the first time, the Japanese Prime Minister had sent a delegation after the war to Philippines. And when the Japanese spoke to a full house of top leaders of the Philippines, including cabinet ministers, heads of army, everybody, they apologized for what Japan had done to Philippines at that time. And there was no response from the audience. They got up again and went forward. He said, "We cannot ask you to forget, but we today beg you to please forgive us. We will never make the same mistake again." They were still pilled out in silence. Then they moved forward and said, "We beg you to please forgive us. we cannot ask you to forget it. And there was a standing ovation from the whole audience. And I saw the tide of history turn in front of my eyes that day. A lady came to me after this meeting and said, "Do you see that church up there? That's where the Japanese had killed my husband." I had never thought that I will ever see the face of a Japanese again. I hate them, I hate their nation. This was the anger. But then she said, "After what I have seen and heard today, I cannot believe it. I want to forget and forgive, but it's not easy." And she burst into tears. When I was writing this thing in the book, tears were on the paper and on the laptop, because these were human experiences that were so real and so deep that one cannot just wash them away. But I will not go into more, but that's one instance of an emotional, difficult passages to write in the book.
Thank you, Uncle. I think this book deserves an audio version of the book in your voice, which will keep inspiring people. We'll go to Suresh Mathew next, and then Auntie Linda. Suresh, if you can unmute yourself.
Dear R.D. and Prabhaji, thank you very much for being part of my life. Actually, I came to Asia Plateau at the time and it was very difficult for me. I was going through a very tough phase in my life. I came for a student conference, and in spite of all my mixed up attitude and behavior, you took me in for what I was. There was not a time, there was not an instance where you came to me and said, "This is how it should be." There was no telling you what to do. One could feel your presence and your care. There was nothing that you said at any time that put me off. And I want to really thank you for that. It's something that has always stayed with me, even now when I'm working. This is something that sustains me because I really understand what it is to interact with people, what it is to be compassionate, how it is to be really understanding another person. Although I still react, although I say things I shouldn't say and I regret. But these are things that I will never forget. And I want to thank you for your lives. Thank you for being part of my life. And thank you for everything, all that you've done for me personally and to those around you. And many of us who've been part of the generation have really been influenced from it. And it just sustained us through some of the toughest times in my life. And I want to thank you so much. I'm so grateful that I was able to be part of this book launch. This is something that I will cherish. I will hold it. I'll go through it. And I know I'll relive the memories as I go along in my life. Much gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suresh. And I know you speak for so many of us when you say that. Thank you. We'll go to Auntie Linda and then Auntie Nirja. We'll come to you after that.
Congratulations, R.D. It's wonderful you've done this book. I look forward to looking at it. It's wonderful to be part of all of you today and to see all faces I've not met for, people I've not met for so many years, but I hold dear. I worked with R.D. From 1970 for about 7.5 years. But I've known this family through many, many years. I've traveled with R.D., worked with him with court cases and going to Delhi offices and getting permissions and putting together portfolios. And I remember I was a very young person. RD took me on as his secretary, as the director of Asia Plateau, and I think I was not quite 21. And I remember saying, it was just like too much responsibility. And RD looked at me very squarely one day and he pointed his finger at me and he said, I want you to be as responsible as the director of Asia Plateau. And, he used to send me off to offices in government offices to get permissions, like, for cordless microphones. And I never knew the language very well, but he really trusted me and he stretched me to do very difficult things. I think I would have just enjoyed being in my comfort zone. And even with court cases, when we were fighting a battle, prove that we were an educational trust. There were many things, but I had the joy and the privilege of working with RD and Prabha. Prabha's laugh, said it all. She loved laughing, and she really, it says in the Bible, laughter is a good medicine, and Prabha was good medicine too, for all of us. I enjoyed meeting all their family in Chandigarh, playing Holi and all those things. And Nikhil and Sunil, they mean a lot to me. And it was a family that I felt, I felt God put me with you all, RD and Prabha. I learned a lot, and I thank God that He has faithfully brought you this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll listen to Auntie Nirja, you're on mute, and then we'll go to a little further away to Melbourne and hear Mohan and Daya. But Nirja, Auntie, first you.
Is it now unmuted? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I just want to say it's one thing to live through momentous events. It isn't quite another thing to document them and to leave it for posterity, for generations to come. So it's a very special congratulations to RD, who at this age has achieved it. Very, very, it's no small joke, no small thing to actually write a book. So really many, many congratulations, RD, for that effort, for that work, and to Prabhaji, and to the whole Mathur clan, and to every single one who's made that possible. I look forward to reading it. And I also want to say what a privilege it has been to be part of your lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohan and Daya.
Thank you. One of the great words I have taken away from RD is the word fantastic. It's one of those great positive words that RD always brought out when describing something that great that was happening. The other thing that I find myself doing sometimes is when I want to emphasize something, it's rubbing my hands like this and trying to emphasize the point. RD, Rusilala, and Raj Mohan were a great trio at Asia Plateau. They held the space of leadership, and they had talents. Each one had a talent that complemented each other. RD had this great skill and genius of reaching bureaucracy and government. And the birth of Asia Plateau would not be possible if those government and bureaucracies had not been reached and convinced that this place needed to happen without even 1 rupee being passed under the table. And that is a tremendous achievement. RD, Rusi, and Raj Mohan would run meetings every morning, and I spent some time at Asia Plateau, and those training sessions have held me to good stead all my life, where personal change was not an end in itself, but personal change needed to be translated to global change. And that to me, I think, is something we need to reclaim in the work of Initiative the Change today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. I think Dr. Anand, Uncle, did you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. I'm now talking as a doctor. You see, this young man of 93 years, let all the younger friends who are attending this function know the secret. The secret is what we as doctors say, the production of a hormone called oxytocin, a love hormone, a happy hormone. When you do something good for someone, like we say when a mother breastfeeds her baby. So when you do something good for someone, you produce that hormone. And that is the secret of people like him who share the pain of others, especially when I noticed him fighting the battle between union leaders and the people with whom they were in fight. And so I just end what I want to say, follow his example, and remember these two lines of the song. किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sid, can I share for a minute, please?
Yes, I hear that's Rekha.
Yes. Like everyone knows, I'm the naughty Rekha. So when I heard that Mr. R.D. Mathur was in Bombay years back and staying with Sunil and Monica, I called him up and I said, I want to come and meet you. And when I met him, I told him, I want to write down what you're speaking. I won't record, but I'll write it down. And I said, you know, in my life, it's the R factor. So whether it is R.D. Mathur, it's Dr. Anand, whether it's Rusi Lala or Raj Mohan, I want to know what should this R do? And I still cannot forget, I have got pages of his, which I've written down, more than 10 pages. But one thing that I can never forget, and I keep on quoting that, which most of you have heard, he always says that there are snowflakes everywhere. We need to build an avalanche and ensure that there is an avalanche. And I cannot forget that, Mr. Mathur, ever. And as a teacher, I definitely try to do that. So thank you for sharing that with me and being in our life. God bless.
Thank you, Rekha. R.D. Uncle, Linda Auntie has written, but it's come as a private message, so I'm going to read it out. This is a well-kept secret that R.D. Uncle is a great cook. And Auntie Linda learned some basics of making curry from him. Not known. we have another maybe up to 5 minutes. So all of you who were waiting to speak later, now is later. Mike, I can see your hand. Yes.
Well, R.D. and Prabha, profound gratitude to you both and to so many friends at Asia Plateau. I first visited in 1971, in the summer, shortly before the monsoon. and I've been coming back to Asia Plateau so many times I've lost count since then. And I think the last time was about 2 years ago. I think it was probably the last gathering at Asia Plateau before the COVID pandemic. And I've had nothing but the profoundest welcome from so many friends in India, coming as a Brit. I was born almost exactly at the time of India's independence. And I'm aware of the horrendous sins of our history, from the Jallianwala massacre and many other things. And yet I have found the profoundest welcome and friendship from so many friends in India, friendships that have lasted a lifetime. And it's just very moving. And it's been a huge privilege to join in this book launch today. I hugely look forward to reading it as soon as possible. And thank you, R.D. and Prabha, for the warmth of your welcome to this Brit and to so many other Brits who've been to Asia Plateau over the years. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Auntie Prabha, we would love to hear from you. Anything that you would like to say?
You've suddenly caught me. But Siddharth, it has been a wonderful life God has given us. And I feel very privileged that we have had this life with MRA for so many years and the opportunities it gave us to sort of be in the families and live with them all over and see what they go through. And I found that whichever nationality we are, whichever country we are, but all our problems are the same. And when we meet people, we find that we very soon that all our insecurities, all our fears, all the things, problems, we are all the same. And it has given me such an insight into the lives of people all over. And I feel very, very grateful to have had this chance to be a part of this life and what we learned in Asia Plateau and what it meant to us and where our children have grown. I'll never forget and I'll never be grateful enough. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a lot of messages in the chats, and I know Karishma and others will make it available to both of you. But I just want to say, both of you are such big heroes for so many across the world, and I hope your book inspires many others on this call to write their own books.
Hello.
Is somebody wanting to say something before we close? I guess not. And anybody who, I hope you've seen the message in the chat about how you can get the book. Aparna here is going to post the message again. So please feel free. For Indian delivery addresses, you can use the link to buy the book online. For our guests, for our friends from outside India, if the book needs to be delivered, unfortunately, we don't have an automated system to send it, but do write to us on the email address given there, shop.in@ifc.org, and we will respond to you and figure out how to get the book out to you as soon as possible. I guess we should call it a day then. Karishma, anything else?
Thank you. Please also feel free to reach out before you have read the book and after you have read the book to my grandparents. They are really excited and looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
R.D. Uncle, we'll have at least one last line from you and then we will close this call. Any last message for all of us?
Well, the book is the past, and the real tasks is the future. And so I hope the book only inspires people and those who read it to take on the task eternal, and which is so important. I do not think there is anything more important than to leave behind a world calmer, safer, saner for all men everywhere. And I do hope that this book launch is just the beginning of a new simmering that will start across the world. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you for chairing this session, and thank you for all you have been doing.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for joining. Dilip Uncle, you need to get the book. As soon as you get the book, you need to travel to where R.D. Uncle is and he will autograph it for you. But do order your books, and maybe we can all unmute ourselves. We'll be chaotic, but we can all say our congratulations to R.D. Uncle and Prabha Aunty and everybody who's been behind the book.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Lovely to see you all.
Wonderful to see you all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful closing lines.
Congratulations.
Can wave.
Congratulations.